Presentation by Mothers Pat McMahon. My name is Pat McMahon, and this is a presentation by Mothers First on the independent review of the Sun movement. So Mothers First was established in 2004 as a field-based program running targeted nutrition-specific interventions to malnourished pregnant mothers. Now in 2015 we began our advocacy at an international level from then till now. So this presentation is based on the independent review of the Sun published in April 2020. The independent review outlined 42 recommendations to inform the next phase of the Sun movement. So the Sun strategic review is building the next phase of the Sun movement from 2021 to 2025. So the Sun movement was established in 2010 with the primary objective of scaling up nutrition-specific interventions. It now has 61 countries and 4 Indian states in the movement. The movement critically cites its beginnings from the Lancet 2008 Child and Maternal Nutrition series, where they outlined the scaling up of 10 essential nutrition actions. The abiding mantra of the movement is that it is country-led and country-owned. So timeline for the development of Sun 3.0. So from February to March 2019, the draft review was published for open public consultation. In April, the review was finalized and published. April to June, the ExCom Executive Committee of the Sun movement are working on a draft document for the Sun 3.0. In June, there will be a movement-wide consultation on the Executive Committee's findings. Based on that consultation process, in September, the Executive Committee will send the finalized strategic priorities, their recommendations to the lead group. So, the key findings of the independent review. So perhaps one of the most critical findings is where the finding that it says that country voices and priorities are secondary to the agenda and interests of some multilateral entities and donors that have considerable power and influence within the governance of the movement. Also, there have been no evidence for impact on scaling up nutrition interventions. And the movement has failed in its mantra to be a country-led movement. The strategy has no clear focus, no clear priorities, and no agenda. And there is a general over-optimism in the view of country progress in annual reports and global gatherings. This presentation will outline the key recommendations from the independent review for the development of 3.0. It will look under governance structures, vision and strategy, scaling up nutrition priorities, impact and accountability. So governance structures. As we've already said, country voices and priorities are secondary to the interests of some multilateral entities and donors. The review has called for a radical transformation of the governance structure. So the executive committee. So the review has called for the executive committee to transcend to a fully functioning governing board. That they will be responsible for overseeing the development and implementation strategy and monitoring performance of the Sun movement. And critically, to increase the country representation on the board. So the lead group has overall responsibility for progressing towards the Sun movement strategic objectives. The recommendations: to revise the lead group's role and title, focus on ambassadorial and advocacy activities, Critically, not to have responsibility for strategy development or for monitoring towards achievement of strategic objectives. The Council should plan its activities around the Sun Movement strategy and identify country priorities. The Sun Movement Secretariat. The independent review found that the nutrition expertise needed to be more well-rounded. They needed to have a capacity to understand nutrition policy and programming, and having the ability to develop such things as position papers, knowledge management, including synthesizing emerging new evidence and documentation of country experiences. So it's asked of the recommended that the Sun Movement coordinator should have a senior nutrition advisor. Their role should not include the oversight, the day-to-day running of the secretariat strategy, no leadership of the Sun Movement Secretariat, and the primary focus should be on advocacy. So clearly, this calls for the independent review is calling for a radical change in governance. The change in governance will help the movement become more inclusive, country-owned and led in its decision-making process. Help to minimize the conflicts of interest that currently exist. More clearly defines the roles and the duty of each aspect of the movement. And facilitate greater knowledge transfer between the Sun Movement Secretariat and countries. So the vision. So the movement has a vision of, by 2030, a world free from malnutrition in all its forms. The review found that its vision is generic. The review on child undernutrition. So the organization vision statements and what it communicates one message, but its actions convey quite a different one. Now, the independent review recommended not to invest time and resources in developing a new vision and mission statement. So this is probably one of the only points where we would fundamentally disagree with the independent review findings. We believe that a well thought out vision can form the basis of redefining the scope and strategy of scaling up nutrition actions for the next decade of the movement. Such a vision statement might look like: achieve the 2020 World Health Assembly targets on nutrition in a country-centered, inclusive approach in middle and low-income countries. The importance of a strong vision, and a vision that is smart, that it's measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And it will also help to inform the strategy. Now, the review findings of the strategy, of the current strategy, are quite critical. It says that the strategy has no clear focus, no clear priorities, and no agenda. So the review's recommendations said that the strategy clearly should be the priority. Specifically, recommendation 14 says that supports some countries to identify a limited set of actionable priorities areas that are currently under-addressed or underperforming. The strategy should include ways that it will play out in practice and not simply on paper. So, for example, it's calling for scenario planning with key stakeholders to understand the technical implications for scaling up nutrition interventions. So specifically on recommendation number 14, and to support countries to identify a limited set of actionable priorities areas that are currently underaddressed or underperforming. Now we need to look at what are our priorities areas when it comes to nutrition. So nutrition can be divided into nutrition sensitive and nutrition specific interventions. The movement origins cites its origins from the Lancet Nutrition series, where that series outlined 10 essential nutrition actions to be scaled up. Critically, in 2008, the Lancet said that 36 countries had enough evidence to bring these interventions to scale. So when we're looking at nutrition-specific and nutrition-sensitive interventions, we're only dealing with a limited set of interventions. So the nutrition-specific interventions that you see here are based on the Lancet Nutrition series, and the nutrition-sensitive addresses the nutrition-specific that addresses the immediate need. Nutrition-sensitive program, on the other hand, and the nutrition-specific is the basis of the Lancet. These are the Lancet essential nutrition actions. Nutrition-sensitive looks at the underlying systematic causes of malnutrition. So clearly there needs to be an intervention mix. If we try to look at, which we have done, is try to look at why the current strategy has no focus or priorities. It's because the movement in the past 10 years has failed to identify intervention strategies, which intervention strategies need to be scaled up. So this is clearly evident in the Sun in Practice on the website. So if we're looking for examples of best practice, we can look to the Investment Framework for Nutrition by the World Bank, where in 2017, they outlined the cost for scaling up essential nutrition actions. They outlined the impact that they would have on achieving World Health Assembly targets. And critically, they outlined a financing model for scaling up interventions, which included both in-country scaling up of interventions, financing of scaling up interventions, innovative financing for programs, and overseas development aid. So an example of a functional nutrition-specific and sensitive strategy can be seen in USA's current strategy, the multi-sectorial nutrition strategy from 2014 and 2025. So this really does offer a very strong impact for the Sun creating a new strategy, which clearly has to be the priority. And why this is important? Well, we have nutrition-sensitive interventions and nutrition-specific interventions, as we've outlined. But the Sun movement have done an analysis on 25 Sun countries, and we can see here that the nutrition-sensitive funding allocations can be up to between 13 and 15 times more than the nutrition-specific. And we need to bear in mind that the nutrition-specific interventions are meeting the immediate need, are looking at the immediate need. Currently, the nutrition-specific interventions have coverage rates from between 0% and 25%. So clearly, this is a place of intervention need that recommendation number 14 has outlined we need to fill. So next steps and conclusions. So thank you for going on this little journey with us on our findings of the independent review. So the findings of the independent review, particularly around conflicts of interest and the movement not acting in the best interest of its stakeholders, causes us concern for the ability for the process to develop Sun 3.0 in a meaningful and useful way. So Mother's first endeavour is to document the whole process and present our findings to the lead group in September. So our call to action is for the next round of public consultation in June. So we would encourage everybody to look at the independent review findings and be part of this public consultation, because this has the potential in this era of uncertainty with the COVID virus to be a transformative pathway to do things differently. So this is the first presentation in a number of presentations that we will be presenting to you, the stakeholders. Thank you for the opportunity and taking the time to listen.